Hello there, welcome back to the Codex. So, today, I'm finally bringing you some information covering the Venato Prime. I wasn't sure if I was actually going to cover the Venato or the Vidaria Prime for that matter, but there's so many interesting interactions with the Venato Prime alongside it actually being a good melee on its own that I decided to put this video out. So first of all, we're just going to showcase the two main builds that I actually use on the Venato because it's actually a good melee. So we'll be showcasing that first. Of course, the generic melee influence build works on this weapon, and to be fair, it actually works exceptionally well on this weapon because of its unique trait of on status effect, you inflict Tau status effect, and it also has plus 50% additional combo count chance if you happen to specifically use it on Caliban. The important part though is that you inflict a Tau status on every status effect. The status effect of Tau status is 10% status vulnerability on the enemy up to 10 stacks of Tau, which means that at 10 stacks, you have a 100% status chance vulnerability. Now, vulnerability for status chance works the same way as damage vulnerability, where since it's an incoming multiplier, it's a total multiplier to your fully modded status chance. So on this version of the build, for example, since it has between the status chance from Galvanized Elementalist and Weeping Wounds, it has over 200% status chance. So even if we round down, for example, and say 200%, that 200% status chance, if you're hitting an enemy that has 10 stacks of Tau giving you a 100% vulnerability, effectively means that you have 400% status chance against that enemy. So it's just doubling your status chance against anybody that has those max Tau stacks. So incredibly strong effect. It means that on a influence setup, for example, you're going to be applying up to twice as many electric procs as you would be applying were it not for that Tau status. Now, that will not spread through melee influence because Tau is not an elemental status type, which influence only spreads elemental status types. But since the main enemy that's actually right in front of you that you are hitting will be receiving twice as many electric procs, essentially, then you'll still be spreading twice as many electric procs. So that's still quite the buff for melee influence, so it's very good for that. Let's go ahead and showcase that real quickly. Of course, we all know it's going to be good, but as always, we'll showcase it, and then we'll move on to a heavy attack version of the build. All right, so here we are. We're hopping into a conjunction survival per usual. And once we get this 12x combo stacked, you can see that, of course, as expected, the melee influence performance of this weapon, as it is on most weapons, because, I mean, let's be real, it's melee influence, is very, very good. But again, it's uniquely good on this weapon thanks to that Tau status making you apply an exorbitantly high amount of status effects, especially paired with the extremely good base stats of the Venato Prime. Both the base crit and the base status chance are both over 30%. I believe it's 34% and 32%. So incredibly good base stats paired with a incredibly good passive effect. Turns out equates to a good melee. Who would have thought? I don't think we even need to really see this for too much longer. This is just, you know, classic influence thing. So let's go ahead and hop over to perhaps the more interesting heavy attack build. So now we have a melee Afflictions heavy attack build to look at, which is also very good. Now, the Venato Prime, being a scythe, does have the classic scythe mechanic of the heavy attack causing both a forced knockdown and a forced slash proc. That makes it basically perfect for a melee Affliction setup, which says enemies affected by status effects gain 6 additional stacks when they're knocked down or flung by melee attacks. That means that if you do knock them down and apply a slash status, you're actually applying 7 slash stacks to them, which is an exorbitant amount of slash proc damage, especially if you do pair that with the Prime Smite mod. Now, this is not mandatory, but if you do want to do absolutely insane maximal damage, putting a Prime Smite mod will more than double your damage because Prime Smite, or any kind of Smite mod, or Faction Multiplier, or a Roar even, for example, because Roar is actually calculated as a Faction Multiplier, double dips on status effects, on damage over time status effects like Slash, like Electric, like Toxin, so on, so on. So when this says times 1.55, that actually applies twice, making it a 140% damage increase instead of a 55% damage increase. So this is a 2.4x multiplier on your damage, which of course is extremely high. If you don't want to run that, you can instead run more crit chance or crit damage or base damage or range or any combination of effects you want, whatever you kind of utility mod. I'm going to go ahead and show you this version of the build with the max damage. Just keep in mind that if you do want to drop this, just cut the damage you see down to like a third. And honestly, that's still going to kill them because this does millions of damage. Now let's go ahead and hop back into that same mission here and take a look. All right, here we are back in the mission. And as you can see, once we get those galvanized stacks stacked up, most of the enemies, they take so much damage from this that they're not actually able to survive even just the initial hit. Because keep in mind, you are still getting a very large amount of initial hit damage as well as that forced slash proc on most enemies. So let's see if I can find somebody who can actually not immediately die so that you can see how funny those are. There's, yeah, 1.9 million. And that was actually a minimized amount of damage because of follow through. I hit so many enemies that the reason that guy survived is because he didn't actually take 100% damage from the initial hit, which means that 1.9 million could actually be more like 2, 3, 4, 5 million damage, depending on whether or not it's the first enemy you hit. And I'm not using any other kind of multipliers here, except for technically I do have Tenacious and Reinforced Bond active, so I am getting that crit bonus from Tenacious Bond, but I think at this point a lot of people run that on most of their companions. So you can see I can swipe into this whole crowd here. I think I just saw somebody take like 2.3 mil. There's like a 2.2 mil right there. Yeah, it just completely evaporates everybody. 6.5 million, there's a great example of the more full damage that you can do when you have things like viral procs on enemies, for example. So if you want to prime them and use things like, if I pop Roar right now, for example, I'll do even more damage. Let's go ahead and pop that. There's a 4.8 mil. Yeah, it completely obliterates. And this does so much damage that whether they're level 100 or whether they're level 1000, you're going to be one-tapping them with these heavy attacks either way. And it would also be pretty decent for Acolytes because it is pretty chunky one-hit damage. So you can start to wail on them before they build up too much damage resistance. However, not only is the Venato Prime a fantastic actual melee on its own, but it also has a lot of very interesting interactions with certain Warframes and abilities. So let's go talk about that. So this unique Tau effect that the Venato has is able to inherit over and apply to some Warframe abilities. When this says on status effect, inflict Tau status, this actually is not only on status effect for the Venato itself. If you're using, for example, Chroma's Elemental Ward, specifically the Ice version, and you deal the reflected damage that this causes, you actually are able to auto-reflect Tau status onto enemies just for having the Venato equipped. You don't even have to swing the Venato a single time, just for reflecting that damage. Because it's coded as a melee hit, for some reason it inherits Tau status. This is very funny on a Warframe like Citrine with her third ability, Prismatic Gem, because the way Prismatic Gem works is that whenever you proc a status effect on an enemy, that is what triggers the gem to go and attack them. So by auto-reflecting damage onto an enemy and then proccing that Tau status, since you've now just applied a status effect to them, you automatically trigger the gem. You start building up damage on them. And then if you use a Kubro setup with the mecha set like you saw in my Citrine video, you can automatically trigger the basically massive mecha detonations and kill everybody around you. Now to really feed into that, we're running 4 Emerald Shards with gain plus 15% ability damage on enemies affected by corrosive status. So since we're running 4 of those, that's 60% ability damage, and then we're still running 1 Violet Shard for the energy restore from the health orbs we can get from her first ability. Now the reason why those Emerald Shards are able to work, just in case you have not seen my Citrine video, here's the build by the way, is because we are using Archon continuity. So thanks to the crystal doing heat, toxin, electric, and cold damage, that toxin damage that it does is also going to apply corrosive. So this is the triggering corrosive for the Emerald Shard. So this is very, very funny with the mecha setup. Let's go ahead and hop into a mission and showcase what I'm talking about here. All right, so here we are on the mission. Just make sure you have at least your 3rd and your 4th up, and ideally your 2, of course, to actually keep you alive. And you'll see that if I just stand here, once enemies start shooting at me, I'm going to auto-reflect Tau status onto them. Well, if they don't automatically die, that is. Let's see if we can see. There, you can see Tau status was on that enemy right there. I'm not meleeing. I'm not even just using my weapons. I'm just standing here and auto-reflecting Tau onto these guys, which then auto-triggers the crystal, which then stacks up damage for the mecha set, which then blows up the entire room. So let's see how many kills I can get with doing almost nothing. The only thing I'm going to do is occasionally cast my first ability, just to generate those health orbs primarily. And aside from that, it's basically my Kubro and the crystal doing all the work for me to blow these rooms up. We can see it's almost been a minute here. We'll see how many kills I have in just a moment. So at the 1 minute mark, just about, we have 106 kills. So over 100 kills, now 124. I just gained 20 kills in the 2 seconds it took me to say that because my Kubra blew up the entire room. Now 140 kills. So you can see, again, basically doing nothing. I am automatically killing over 100 enemies a minute easily keeping my air up for survival. I mean, it's hilarious. The synergies on this build are comical. If you want the easiest Citrine auto nuker, auto bomber setup you've ever seen, try this out. It's very, very funny. It's essentially the Citrine build from my Citrine video, just adding in the Venato on top of it for even more quality of life, even more convenience, and automating the carnage around you, basically. However, Citrine is not the only frame that's able to utilize the Venato in a very interesting way. Let's go ahead and talk about another one. So another Warframe that has an interesting interaction with the Venato is Mesa. Mesa's third ability, Shatter Shield, also counts as reflected damage, and this will also automatically apply Tau status to nearby enemies. Now, a lot of the times, it's not gonna like instantly apply 10 stacks to them. You'll often only have 1 or 2 Tau stats effects on surrounding enemies. However, the reason why that's useful, aside from just being cool, is that if you're using a Regulators build that is utilizing Galvanized Shot, by adding Tau status on top of all the other stats effects that you have, that's one more type of status that's unique on the enemy. So that's effectively giving you another 120% base damage. Now that does mean that you're competing with the Venato versus the Fear Axe, because you could also use the Fear Axe with the Amalgam Fear Axe mod for plus 45% secondary fire rate, which is of course always on and very useful. But it is cool that Mesa now has another option for a uniquely useful melee in regards to her regulator. So let's go ahead and showcase that real quickly here. Let's just unpause this guy, activate Shatter Shield. If you watch his health bar, you'll see that as he shoots me, there we go, automatically applying Tau status to himself. He's also getting impact there because he's applying impact from his own regular damage to himself. But yeah, that Venato Tau status is uniquely carrying over and being reflected onto him. Now he has 3 right there. So occasionally, depending on how fast you're being shot at, they might get 2, 3, 4 Tau stacks on them. But as long as they have at least 1, you're getting that extra 120% base damage from Galvanized Shot. So very interesting interaction there. And there's now one more Warframe, at least that I know of, that uniquely benefits from the Tau status, and that is going to be Nova. So per usual, Nova's 4th ability, Molecular Prime, has very humorous interactions with basically any weapon trait in the game. The Spinner X, for example, was another one that we played around with in the Araxia update, but Nova's Molecular Prime inherits weapon properties from the weapon that you explode enemies with, basically. So if you're actively meleeing, this is not automatic like the other ones. You have to actually kill the enemy with the Venato. If you're actively meleeing with the Venato, then enemies that you detonate are able to spread Tau status to nearby enemies hit by the molecular explosion. So it's even more enhanced Tau spreading. So let's go ahead and summon a group of enemies this time. We'll go ahead and make them. Let's go back to max level, 230, Steel Path, all that. Let's pause them again so they're more grouped up so we can more accurately see the effect here. It also probably would have been smarter for me to use the heavy attack version of the build, but that's okay. Once I kill a guy here, you can see that even the enemies over here, like that guy who I wasn't actually hitting with the Venato, are getting that Tau status on them. This guy all the way over here on the opposite side, who I was not at all directly hitting, has that Tau status on him. Again, that's from the explosion from Nova's 4th ability. Molecular Prime is able to inherit that weapon property. So as you can see, the Venato is a very good melee on its own. If you just want to use it as an actual melee with the Influence build or with the Afflictions build, or maybe you want to go a magnetic, melee Vortex build, it's a good melee. But it also has all of these very interesting interactions. The Citrine one is my favorite, or rather the Elemental Ward one, which technically you can use on any frame, but specifically on Citrine, very funny. But yeah, very interesting melee. If you guys have any other sort of synergies that maybe I didn't think about, any other frames or any other abilities that are able to make use somehow of this Tau status, let me know down in the comments. I'm very interested. I love, unique loadout synergies that go beyond just the normal builds that we do. So let me know down below. Always interesting. If you guys enjoy the video, make sure you drop a sub, make sure you drop a like, drop a comment. Really helps the channel. If you want to support me even more, you can become a YouTube member, get benefits like early access to some of my videos. Anyways, hope you guys liked it, and I will see you in the next one.